All right. Uh, Welcome to the river, everyone, and all those who have joined us. We're around the world, and it's so wonderful to see everyone here gathered live. And those who are only watching or joining us by video, welcome to you as well. So a big welcome to everyone to the river. Okay, we are going through and we're finishing the final part of this discipleship series. And this is very community focused and based as we have now launched River Branch, and we seek to walk together as a community, a wider community, and we look at these matters of discipleship. And of course, this is what we were commanded to do, was to go and make disciples of nations. And so these are the things that we have to grapple with and we consider as a part of our walk and our journey. And it is the thing that ultimately seems to be missing from a lot of things on both sides of the river, as we say, on each riverbank, whether it be our Christian brothers and sisters or our Jewish brothers and sisters. And so we seek as a community, as we come into the river and sort of operate with this great picture, this great vision that was given to Daniel of our Messiah being in the river, hovering above the waters and bringing us together into the living waters. And so this is what we seek to do as a community. And so it's very important as we look at this, and what the series has been based on is honor and shame. And, how is it that we relate with one another? How is it that we walk with one another? And ultimately, how is this looked at in the Father's eyes? And how does he weigh up these matters? And of course, we talked about that a vast majority of what we call the New Testament, or the Brit Hadashah, is behavioral based. And there's a reason for that. We all suffer with something, that this disease of iniquity, our fallen state, and we are given this time, this short amount of time in the time domain. We've come through the matrix, we've come into the time domain, and we get a chance to work this out. But there's very special reasons as to why, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in today's final part of the series. And so what will we look like when this is all done? When our time, our moment in the test, in the time domain, is over. And so honor and shame and how we carry this out is a big part of how the Father views us. I just got a quote here, and this is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who often went by Waldo, but he was an American essayist, lecturer, philosopher, minister, poet. He was also transcendentalist, and this is where one believes in the inherent good of man. I don't aspire to that, because I don't believe the word does. None are good, only he is. And so that was one part of this man's life, which I certainly didn't aspire to. But he had many good things to say, and but actually we're in the opposite of that. We're born into a test with the disease of iniquity, and so we are on a sanctification process, and we are not born inherently good. We are born as people who will miss the mark. We come into the time domain, delivered from this great into the time domain from the matrix, and so we are in this space where we consider things. However, he does say an interesting thing here in the quote, and he says, the purpose of life is not to be happy. I would agree with that. We are not on the pursuit of happiness, although we can experience happiness. In no way is he saying that being happy is not something that we can enjoy while we're here. But really, we want to get to a place where we can experience this joy that surpasses all understanding. And so he's got that right. He says the purpose of life is not to be happy, it is to be useful. And he says here to be honorable and to be compassionate, to have it make some difference, that you will have lived and lived well. And so this is very interesting how he touches on the honorable, and it's very much this behavioral aspect and how this relates to us getting to a place where we will weigh things up from a compassionate position. And so This was a neat way to sort of finish here, that we do want to walk in this honorable space so we can walk maturely and with compassion. But we need to consider what the Father has laid out for his people and for his body. I've got here, the greatest in the kingdom, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Now, this is an interesting, as our Messiah said this to the disciples, what he's essentially saying is for us to finish together. And of course, we're all sitting here, well, I want to serve, I've got this idea, this initiative, these things that we do, who's the greatest in the kingdom? We all want to finish in that space and aspire to him looking upon us in this test and being pleased with us. But one of the ways that Messiah seemed to indicate was actually being pleased with us, was wanting us to finish together. Essentially, the first shall be last and the last shall be first is actually finishing the race together. You're not actually trying to be better and I'm going to be first and I'm going to be the greatest. You actually want to have others come up and walk and to be able to finish this race in a place. And so the reminder here is we just reiterate some things and look at the why of this in today's teaching. And my reminder to everybody is that, do you want to walk with someone who just wants to beat you? And someone who wants to run ahead of you and leave you behind or not care about your race? Or do you want to walk with those who really want to walk with you and want you to finish your race, as Paul would put it, in the time domain? And so this is the choice that we're making as a people of the faith and as a community. And so we've got this place, this position where Messiah has said to us, it's not about you thinking about who's the greatest in the kingdom. It's about you wanting others to finish with you in a way that's pleasing. And those are the people that you want to walk with. Well, of course, the only way to do that is if they're behaving in a way that weighs up and considers honor and shame, shameful behavior and honorable behavior. And so this is the place we want to walk to as we think about this whole message of discipleship. Just quickly on the River Branch logo, as we look to do this, and I've got it hidden in plain sight, is we sort of looked at this when we launched this, and to look at discipleship, there was some things here built in. And basically, just what we're reflecting with what we're trying to move forward. There's the biblical faith. We acknowledge that there are these two sides of the river. And in the logo that we identify with, of course, River Branch, when this is all over, is not going to be anymore, and the former things will be no more. This is just our way of identifying and understanding what we're trying to do to walk together to be pleasing to the King. And of course, in this, we've got the living waters, his ruach working through his fivefold, and it's sort of given a five sort of strip there, and these different positions and offices that he gives. As we mature in Messiah, we will start to operate in these various ways mentioned in the Brit Hadashah. And so we've got there. And of course, we've got here, he is the branch with his assembly in the kahal, and there's sort of the seven leaves there representing the seven kahal mentioned in Revelation, and it being he is the branch, and this is what is sort of coming forth, and the living waters coming out of him, and the way this works. So just something that we haven't shared with people publicly, and so this is a part of what you're seeing when you look at this river branch. What is River Branch? And we are trying to follow Messiah. We are not trying to be Christian. We are not trying to be modern Judaism. We are literally looking to follow Messiah. And so as a part of that, when we spend time on these two parts of the river, we pick up a lot of extra baggage. And a lot of that extra baggage can create a lot of interesting behavior. And we need to stop the bad behavior. We need to come into the living waters and get washed of this stuff, because it's actually a part of our garment preparation when we're finished today. There is reason why this all matters. And so we've tried to encapsulate some of that into what we're expressing in our little part of his body in River Branch. Okay, so we looked at this drawing disciples after themselves. And this is very important, because this is the thing that comes in from among us. Okay, from among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things Okay, this twisted, this diastropho, in the Greek, to distort, to turn aside, to oppose, essentially become an adversary position to what's going on. And so this is interesting. As a result, it corrupts and perverts. And so what they do is they try to draw disciples after basically, I know better, my way of thinking, all this kind of stuff. And we're told to be on the alert for all of this, because ultimately it's going to relate to our inheritance. And so we don't want to be following after those who are not looking to finish the race together and to see others grow in Messiah. They're actually doing things in an adversary position, whether they know it or not. And in most cases, what's interesting is people don't know it. And so we've got to be aware of these things as a part of these warnings. So we looked at the destructive line of sights, the Patty the prophetess and Pat the prophet and Tony and Trixie the teacher and meddling Madeline, Bob the busy bee, Agenda Annie, arguing Arnold, usurping Ursula, divisive Deborah. These are all ways that it can express itself, because we get into a place where simply I know better and I'm not going to walk in this place with others or in the design, and respect that this is his body, not ours. They are his people, not ours. And so we need to try and help each other get to this place where we are submitting into the King. And so even though he gives us the sovereignty to walk this out and to play this out, when we come into the house, we start to understand that his house isn't a house of chaos and that he has assigned things a certain way to ensure that. So how do we walk in a biblical discipleship framework at River Branch? And so we've been looking at these things as we've gone along. And one of the things here is in 2 Timothy 2:14-15, it says, remind them of the things and charge them before Elohim. And that's what we're trying to do with this series. Remind them of this. And so that not to quarrel about words, which does none of us any good, but ruins the hearers. So there's this whole thing of what sort of transpires as a part of us journeying. If we don't get something out of the house, if we don't get spiritual adultery out of the house, these things we pick up on the riverbanks, we end up in this place. It says, do your best to present yourself to Elohim as one approved. So this is what we're to do. We're to look at ourselves, look in the mirror, be willing to and be honest with how we're behaving. And is this reverent before Elohim? And therefore, is it pleasing to him? And can we actually serve his people if we're in this place of quarreling and all this sort of things? And this is also that we would not be shamed, rightly handling the word of truth. And so we're looking for this. So how do we do this in River Branch? The structure of the body, Yeshua and all. And so this is how it expresses itself under these principles within River Branch. And so we have our River Branch eldership. You've got Michael and I that are looking to oversee as a part of that eldership and in the wider community. And we do this with the men servant leaders and the women servant leaders. One is can be midrashic, working out things which deal with matters of spiritual headship, and the other is more organic and how this plays out from a helper sense. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we have the local gatherings and the wider River Branch community. And so the River Village, as we affectionately call it, and the different ministries that are connected into this, sit here, this River Branch, wider River Branch community. And each of those ministries and what they do and how they're connected in the River Village have their eldership, have the people that are overseeing those things. We don't tell people what to do and try and squash the ruach and things like that. What we're saying is that if this is a safe place to be a part of people that are part of the River Village, then there's a connection that has a discipleship thread. And the discipleship thread flows through all of this. And then, of course, what we're doing here today with the local gathering here at River Branch, and we're looking at this, is that there are different initiatives that go on out there, and we want to support those initiatives. Like I say, the role of eldership is not to prevent fellowship, but if we are doing this under a community umbrella, this is something that we need the discipleship connection, the overseeing connection, in order to do this in a healthy and safe way. Because there's lots of things that go on out there in the body of Messiah. Much of it is unhealthy and actually promotes the behavior that we're warned about in the Brit Hadashah. So this is that village picture. And so we got the various ministries that connect in, and all of this is linked by discipleship. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this, but we got some donkeys on the wall here. And so a lot of the donkeys that serve in the men and women and the eldership and whatnot, they're standing on the wall here. And what we're doing is we're ensuring, because outside these gates are the wolves warned about in Scripture. And you'll see here, there's a couple goats standing out here. These are the I know better people. These are the ones that go, and these are the ones that know better. Now, what they don't realize is that there are wolves waiting to devour. And so we want goats to stop butting up, against everyone, but to come in and to be in a environment that is healthier and that is safer, but that is allowed to do and carry out its servitude and its walk to Messiah. If it chooses to stay outside that, then it's choosing, and it has the sovereign choice. Goats have a sovereign choice. I want to be a goat. Okay, well, you can be a goat, but know this. There's lots of weirdness, and there's stuff outside there which we're warned about. And so what we're trying to say to people is that if you want to be a part of this community and come into it, it's not to take away your servitude, your willingness to serve, your sovereignty, your freedom to serve and to walk in that. What it's to do is to come a part of something that has discipleship at its core, not Nicolaitism where people are lording over you, but where you're actually willing to walk with others. When you've taken responsibility of your faith and you're looking at gaining some accountability with servitude, then ultimately that brings about good or bad consequence. Well, we want to be on the good side of the consequence, the honorable side of this equation. So this is how it plays out in the River Branch servant leadership framework. And it's very important for those, if you're thinking about wanting to be a part of the community or come into it, this is how we do things. And so we've got the River Branch eldership that ultimately is looking over and touching all these pieces. It is a very, it's quite a task. Given the size of the ministry, the things we're involved with, what we do, being connected to other ministries, there's a lot involved here, and we need a body to do this and to work together. And so the eldership is tasked with, seeing certain things and what's going on. And so as a community, of course, we take the appointed times and the gatherings, the framework for all of this as instructed in the Torah. And then there's the connected into the river village, like I just explained to you. But under this, and what we have, and a part of this is the men's discipleship, the young adults, which we're just working through right now, and to be able to have something there for the young adults in the community. And that's generally what we consider this sort of 13 to 19-year-old age bracket. And then there's the children, 12 and under. And then the women's discipleship. And so all of these various aspects, how it plays out with the men's discipleship is we have what's called the Donkey Stable Network. And this is where the men can go hash it out. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Sometimes men have to deal with each other in a way that that's not the best for the woman's design to experience or be a part of. Men are designed to be able to do things a certain way. And so we don't want to be not allowing that to transpire. And of course, this is why we see that the way the Father has set up his body, that there is an aspect of the design that is designed to go different places, do different things for different reasons. And so the Donkey Stable Network, Men's Network, and the Roundups is a part of what we do there. And then that will feed into the discipleship camps. With the young adults, we're looking at this becoming a weekly meeting for them, for the young men and the young women separately. So it's a weekly gender-based thing. And then every month they come together in a monthly mixed meeting. It is not about teaching and, usurping parents. And this is a place where young people can come and complain about how wrong their parents are and all that sort of thing. It is about connecting the community and to do this in a healthy way. Because quite frankly, if you're of the ages of 13 to 19 right now, and those age groups will be broken up within the young adults as well. It's a very difficult space. And so we know that, and we're trying to look at how we can do this in a healthy way. So we're looking at certain couples that are trusted, that are feeding into the wider community to oversee these things. Then we've got the children and things that we do there. And so we, with Bible Pathway Adventures, to help the parents to raise their children in his ways, fellowship settings, all those sorts of things. And 144 Kids, which we're connected into on the Shabbat gatherings, and what Austin and the team are doing there. And then there's the women's discipleship, and this tends to be a little bit more organic. And so the ladies' informal meetings, which then creates those relationship-based, so we can get to know each other and those women who are part of the support network, and then the community social connections that come a part of that. And then the discipleship camps as well, where the men and the women that are a part of serving into this community come together in these discipleship camps just to discuss how we can do this in a way that's pleasing to him and serve the community better. So, pay attention to yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit, the Ruach, has made you overseers to care for the assembly of Elohim that he has obtained with his blood, not our blood, his blood. So we have an instruction here to have in spirit and truth to actually oversee something, not control people, individuals. They are his people bought with his blood, but to oversee something that it would be healthy and honorable in his eyes. This is a very, how much more I've got here is this instruction in a modern scattered environment where so many people are just wandering out there, or they're waking up, they realize their faith is deeper. Where do I go? How am I supposed to do this? And they end up wandering all over the place. And there's lots of things out there that are warned about. Almost 2,000 years ago, nothing new under the sun. They were just facing it as the birth of the early Kahal assembly, the church, was happening. There was lots of stuff happening out there. Well, we're in a modern scattered environment, and how much more difficult it is. So this is why we do what we do, so that we can do this in a healthier way. So this is this supported thing. What we want to do, and this is under the Acts 2028 principle, is we want to support what people are doing and what they're led to do and what the Father is doing with them out there. But we want to do this in a healthy way. And so this is about coming to the eldership. Now, if somebody is not going to come to the eldership and be a part of the community, and is coming to the community and giving the illusion as if it's a part of the community, this is not something that, if it's not connected and not coming and making itself accountable, it's not something we can support. And so this is very important. Now, it doesn't mean that people can't go off and do their own things. But if they're going to do it under the River Village community, then this is something that we need to be able to understand what's happening. And if not, this is probably not the community for you. If this is something that you don't understand. So one of the things that we're looking for in the eldership is repentance. So this is looking at emotional and spiritual maturity. We're looking at those who are growing. Are they real, and are they truly of the faith? Accountability. Do they know that accountability is a part of this process, and they should not only want it, but they should also be able and want to be able to provide it? Is their own house in order? Things can look good on the outside, but they can be a real mess behind the scenes. And this is not a place to be serving from. And so we need to be serving from a place where our own house is in order. So we need to understand this with people. Just because somebody is wanting to serve doesn't mean they're yet in a place to do so. This overcoming journey, have they overcome things in their life, and dealing with the serious matters as it relates to their own journey? And of course, trustworthy. Trust is learned, not earned. Who can vouch for you? Who walks with you? And so these are the things that we're looking for when one is serving into the community. And it's very, very important. Support from the community to things that are going on out there is not based on likability. Likability is easy. We can like people. It doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to serve. A willingness to serve, a good idea, initiative, perceived knowledge, or skill set. None of it is based on that. Support is given based on one's character, where they're actually at in Messiah. Are they reflecting the character of Messiah? Do they understand that this is about a body, not their own idea, initiative, skills, knowledge, and so on? This will ultimately confirm whether somebody truly is in a state of repentance. There is no other way around this. And so, are they ready to help serve others in a long-term, healthy manner? And this is where, Paul made the plea, we make the plea, allow the eldership and the community and those actually supporting it to do this with joy. And so this then comes down to how we're treating one another in our behavior. So why is eldership support required in the River Branch community? This is to help those coming in, whether they be brand new to the community or they're looking for somewhere to go, the safe in, as we talked about in previous teachings. And what it is do they clearly understand, to help others clearly understand the ministries, the initiatives, the social connections and events which are actually walking with accountability. So when you see that the support is coming from the community, when you see the men and women on the eldership, the ministries that are listed on the websites, those sorts of things, when you see the Support Women's Network and things like that, these are people that are willingly submitting in one to another, as it says. And so they've come to the eldership and have chosen to do that. And so this is to help prevent weirdness or unintentional harm and intentional harm to those who are connected to the River Branch community. Many of you may have experienced, and it's why maybe you're here, is because you've been hurt or harmed by other things going on out there in the body. And so there's a lot of weirdness out there. And of course, as the Brit puts it, even wolves that will seek to devour because they're in a place where they just are doing things from a self perspective and ultimately devour others as a result. And so they become dishonorable vessels. To help protect against those who would try and use the River Branch community to draw disciples after themselves. And so we're not meeting and coming together and supporting this, coming together and serving into this so that others can just come in and use that servitude and what the Father is doing with this community. We are enjoying not only the growth, but very good people that are actually getting this and that give up of their lives to serve one another and to submit into one another. And it's not for people to come in with their idea, initiatives, or so-called knowledge and whatnot, and just to disrespect this. And so this is why it's there. It is responsibility, accountability, and consequence to help create a safe and trusted community environment, to lovingly be able to reproof or correct should anyone or initiative get off track. If anything gets off track in the community or there's weirdness coming in or false doctrine or some sort of weird sort of thing, you want to be in a place where you have people looking for this and saying, hey, brother, sister, that is not lining up with the word, or it is not being done in a way that it should be in a healthy way. And so when people get off track, you want that ability, and you don't want to be walking with something that doesn't have the ability to correct and reprove. And so this is an important thing. We want to do this in love, but it needs to be done from time to time. And this also involves warning the community if someone or a ministry does not wish to have any form of recognized accountability in their lives. So this is where we're talking about those who claim to be, the teacher, the prophet, the whatever else it is. You should want to know why. Buyer beware. If there is somebody or ministry or person that is claiming to be of Yah and doesn't want any part of submitting one to another and accountability and walking this out, you should be wanting to know why. And if you're new to the faith and somebody is wanting to input into counsel into your life, you want to know what accountability do they have in their life? What discipleship do they have in their lives? And we need to grow and teach people this. To just listen and wander around the internet, or somebody comes to you and they go, well, I show up at the River Branch gatherings, therefore, I'm a part of the community. No. If you're going to serve into the community, there is an accountable place. Like I say, eldership's not here to stop fellowship, or those who choose to do things with input and accountability. There's lots of stuff that goes on out there, and we're not to be walking on tender hooks and, oh, can I not fellowship? People are doing their things, connecting all the time in the community. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody who is stepping up and creating social connections, counsel, teaching into people, actually feeding into their lives. Those are the ones that need to come and present themselves before the eldership. And so this is very, very important that they do that, because if not, we cannot support what these people are doing or may be led to do. We want to, and we want to get as many people serving as possible. The idea of an eldership is not to say no to people. The idea is to want to support it and to oversee it. And so if somebody is avoiding that process and is not valuing that process, they do not understand what they are seeing in this thing we call the New Testament and how the expression of his truth plays out in the Ruach. It is not a house of chaos. There is a reason why, because the adversary is out there seeking whom he can devour, and he can use dishonorable vessels to do that. Most people who are acting in a wolf capacity do not believe they are and do not know they are. And I can't stress this enough. There is a deception that goes on, and it's playing on this whole position of self and our pride in all of these things. And we must drop this stuff and learn how to walk as a body. Echad. So we reach out to this. I got here the eldership email here. Making an elder aware of what you're doing is not gaining the support of the eldership. Saying, oh, well, I'm doing this, just thought you should know, and saying that to one of the elders is not that. If you are doing something that's feeding this community, you are to reach out to the eldership now. After we've done this discipleship series, if this is truly something that is spiritually feeding in and connected to this community, then there is a requirement now for you to do this. Not so that it can be stopped, so that it can be understood, supported, and walked out in a healthy manner. And so it's very important. So the things we're looking at, are you connected to a men's disciple? Are you serving in a donkey servant leader position as a part of that and within the stable networks? Are you connected to women's discipleship and gatherings, the informal fellowship, the chinwags, the discipleship camps? Are you connected as a part of the women's support network of ladies? If you're part of the wider ministries connected to the wider River Branch community, these are things that we need to do. Making someone, like I say, aware is not counts for this. Actually coming to the eldership and seeking the support so that we understand who's doing this and why they're doing it. And who are they walking with and are they connected in? Knowledge or likability or good ideas or initiatives is not a place that we can support if we don't know who it is and why they're doing it. So there are initiatives and things that are going on out there, very good ones. We encourage people, come now and make this aware of the eldership, and so that we can support and get in behind this. We want to support as much as we can, but we don't want to do this in a way where someone new into the community or new to the faith can end up going to somebody who has no regard and thinks that they have no responsibility before Messiah and before those they walk with. And so we're going to teach people that this is a part of doing things his way. And so you need to ask yourself, if someone's speaking into your life, who's speaking into their lives? And what accountability do they really have? And don't think that a little bit of knowledge gives someone the right, because there could be a real mess behind that scene and behind that person. So we're going to learn to do this differently. And so again, this is why we labor these things. Last week, I gave this parable of the ice hockey player. I'm just going to reiterate this. If you're a coach on a hockey team, on a professional hockey team, and a fan shows up and thinks they know how to do it better, which most fans think they do, and they're yelling at the coach to put them in the game, an irresponsible coach would say, oh, well, that's fine. You just jump on the ice with the team. And that's ridiculous. A responsible coach is going to go, no, I'm sorry. We need to know who you are. You get out to practice. We'll see if you are what you claim to be. And so there will be a discipleship process enacted just within this little Roman parable. The coach will get to know who this person is. They'll get to see them skate. They'll be able to do this sort of thing. We're not going to put you on the ice if we don't know who you are. But the fan might say, well, I know better. And they try and jump out on the ice because they know better. And of course, they'll get in trouble and there'll be some correcting and reproofing going on if they attempt to do that. And when that happens and they get corrected and reproofed, and then you ultimately have other fans that get upset because they correct and reproof that person. And what's understanding is that these overseers are ensuring that you actually have a game to go to be a part of, to see, and to experience. If you were just to allow a position of anyone to say, hey, listen, I'm a great player in my eyes and I just want to play on your team, you will destroy whatever that is. And Rome does not do this. How much more so is Messiah? We are acting in a way that not even Rome would do. Not in its work environments, its sporting environments, its whatever else environments. They tend to be doing that in the government these days, though. So we're all paying the price for that right now. Anybody just shows up, let's make it fair, let's do this. Who cares who they really are? And we pay a price as a society for this because we don't understand accountability and consequence the way we should. And so then, of course, somebody gets reproof and correction, and Vicky and Victor, the victim, show up. And after they've been reproofed and corrected, it's like, this isn't fair. You should realize how good of a player I am, or, you know, I've been called, or I hear from God, and all this kind of thing, or I know better, and all this stuff's happening. And what's happening is that their reaction is actually spiritually immature. You should be wanting this, and you should not be wanting to serve without it. If you actually have reverence to Elohim, and we know the importance of this, and we actually understand the state that we're in. However, the reaction to this victim reaction, often these people will choose slander against that which gave it accountability instead of repentance. They will actually come against the elderships, the referees, the authorities, because they are not acting in a mature spiritual way. It is spiritually immature. You should want this, and you don't want to be a part of a spiritual community that doesn't have it. It will hurt you. And many of you are here because this is exactly what you've experienced. And this is what we are looking to try and make sure and to oversee that does not happen with that which is associated or a part of the River Branch community. It says here in 2 Thessalonians 3:13-15, as for you, brothers, do not grow weary in doing good. Okay, don't grow weary in doing these things. If anyone does not obey what we say in this letter, take note of that person and have nothing to do with him, that he may be ashamed. So the part of this is that if they don't care, then we are to go, hey, this is not the place for you. Go and do your thing. Not here. Don't regard them as an enemy, but warn them as a brother or sister. But the whole idea is that they may realize their shame of acting and behaving this way. It is in the whole context of honor and shame. If your brother or sister sins against you, and we talk about this, on personal offense, this is the Matthew 18 process. Go to them. If someone in the community has caused you offense, the instruction is that which is offended has the responsibility to go to the person that has offended them. In most cases that I see, most people that are offended are actually dealing with something themselves. And the person that offended them didn't mean to, wasn't trying to, but they're experiencing this. And so the obligation is on the offended. And you go and take it to them and them alone. If you do not do this, you will be used as a part of Lashon Hara and slandering and all this sorts of things. So you want to take your personal offense to someone directly. Then there is the eldership responsibility and those overseeing in any part in the community, in the network, where there's offense to the body. And these are people that constantly are causing dissension and division and quarrels and controversies and saying that they know better. And I pointed out here last week, the word reject here that we're seeing in the English is very serious. The person who's stirring up strife, You are to warn them. Now, this reject here in the Greek, the pararotoma, is actually interesting. You're entreating them. You're trying to actually work with them. But in the end, they are self-condemned. They're excusing themselves. And what it actually means here at the end of this is, if they actually, in this self-condemned position, if they will not hear from those who are overseeing the body, they are themselves putting judgment on, because they are having to be removed from the wider community. What is interesting here in the Greek is the word is basically treat them as one who is not accepted to a wedding invitation, to a feast. Now, this is interesting if we understand the great plan of redemption, which we'll talk about how important this is. You are to treat them as if one is being removed from the wedding feast. And of course, we see the parable of the wedding feast and the one who was bound and put outside. This whole picture of this is to actually go, you are someone who's not fit to come to a wedding. Now, in ancient times, if the community had a wedding in it and you were the one not invited, this would have been on a behavioral matter. So this is really interesting as to how serious this gets. And the English doesn't capture it, but the Greek does. Even the Greek captures this. Actually treat them as one who's not worthy of being invited to a wedding. And that should be sobering to all of us. I just want to note here on this, and this is very important, those who would harm or take advantage of any man, woman, young adult, or child within the River Branch community intentionally, and I make this point, intentionally do this, disregard what we're doing, and have nothing to do with wanting to walk with others in accountability, we will find you and we will remove you and we will warn the entire assembly. Please understand how serious this is. You will not be able to continue in this community acting in this way. And we will warn the wider assembly, and you will be removed from it. We take these matters very seriously because the king instructed us to, and we are warned by the early Kahal to do this. And this gets back to those, and I've got the reference here of Corinthians 5:4-5, where the behavior got so bad amongst the Corinthians because the war with the flesh man and the spirit man was being lost, that actually it was causing such strife and division in the body that they needed to be removed for the destruction of self or their flesh. Okay, so does the design of men and women matter? Well, we looked at this last week, and of course it does. We gave the example here of a woman who showed up at the city gates. So think of the wall we did in the village, in the river village, and we're showing the donkeys on the wall, and they're sitting there. Now, design matters when we have this, when we're overseeing. And the woman shows up, please help me, my baby is very sick. And of course, we talked about the design of a man. A man will look at this, and this is inherently the way we're designed. And we will go, how sick is it? If we're actually doing our job in the wall, we're going to look at this scene, and it's not that we don't care and that we don't have compassion for what we're seeing, but our design will go to a place. What's really going on here? And it says, is that thing even real? It will be looking at this, and we may get to the point, okay, wait right there, we'll send someone out to check it out. What it does is, under the protector design, it will be looking at something and not just going, oh, the compassion takes over the thought process in and of itself. What it does is say, I'll be compassionate, but we're going to find out what's going on here. Unfortunately, if on the woman's design, the nurture design, if the nurture aspect takes over and not that protector aspect, she'll be looking at this and go, oh, no. That poor woman, they're identifying with the position that she's in or supposedly in. And of course, if you make a decision from that perspective, it's open the city gates. Now, if this is not real, you're going to bring down the whole thing. And so what the eldership and what people are doing is, in a design component, is we need both the nurture protector, the overseer protector design, the nurture protector design. We need it operating in a healthy way and together, because this could be someone who needs help but has a very sick baby. And we don't want to be just ignoring that. At the same time, we don't want to just be flinging open the gates because somebody is telling us to. And so we looked at this, this whole thing where people can be doing the same thing and it makes for wonky stuff. And this related to the emotional arrested development, which ends up in spiritually transmitted diseases. And then we looked at the destructive line of sight. You got two people, peas in a pod, and it's like, well, we're the ones that know better, and they do this. And so they become partners in crime and could care less about their behavior. There's the unequally yoked marriage situation, the separate journey marriage. And of course, this doesn't make for a very good line of sight either. And then, of course, both behave in, both have a different faith, belief. EAD, different spiritual diseases, and they're looking at their spouse in their own home as the enemy. I know better. And so these two aren't getting along at all. And of course, all of these are not a great place to serve from. But what if I am not married in all of this situation, because we're showing this? And then someone says, well, okay, well, if you're not married, there's even a greater chance of becoming a spiritual cyclops. Now, does that mean we need to be married in order to be able to serve and be a part of the body? No. But it's now all the more important that we behave the way we're seen in the Brit Hadashah. In fact, if we could get certain things, even Paul said from a servant position, and remember, Yeshua himself is the bridegroom. So he was not married in his example. He is the one. And many of the disciples themselves were not married. However, they walked as a body in true accountability. And so if we don't do that, we risk this even more so to become this spiritual cyclops. But I want to say that you can be a spiritual cyclops whether you're married, singled, or widowed. And I see spiritual cyclopsing going on in the body spiritually with many married couples as a result. So don't think this is just a single thing or a widowed thing. It is not at all. What we're trying to look at here is we don't want to be walking in self, one eye. And so this is important, whatever it is. And none of this is healthy. When we don't walk with an echad line of sight, when we're not walking as a body or with our spouse, or if we're single or widowed, with those in a community that have both line of sights so that they can ensure they have the line of sight. So we don't have this flowing through in discipleship. People are left to be islands unto themselves and to their own devices. This is where we see the source of most issues when overseeing. It's not whether somebody is single, widowed, or married, as such. It's how they're walking that out. And this is where we see the noise. They are essentially walking alone. So we have swerved from the truth. This is interesting. 2 Timothy 18:19, it's saying, they swerve from the truth, saying that the resurrection has already happened. By the way, that's allusion to the fulfillment of the fall appointed times. It says they are upsetting. Now, interesting. They are upsetting the faith of some. The anatrepto, to overthrow, overturn, or destroy, or subvert the faith. And this comes from the Greek, the entrepo, which we spoke of earlier. This shame, a place of shame. So a place of acting in a shameful way is actually going to work to overthrow or overturn, even destroy or subvert the true faith of people. And many people have been hurt because of this kind of action, and it actually does just that. In fact, there may be some people here that are healing and being restored from that very position because this happened to you in your faith walk and journey. From either side of the river bank, or indeed in some of the craziness that we see in some of these Hebrew roots and Messianic movements. But Elohim's firm foundation stands, his foundations. Now, this is interesting, his appointed times, his framework of the dress rehearsals, the Moedim. And this is why that was referenced there, the resurrection has already happened. Bearing this steel, Yah knows those who are his. And let everyone whose names the name of Yah depart from iniquity, depart from self, this disease of doing it yourself. Many people do things in a self perspective because they are seeking affirmation. They're seeking self worth. They are seeking to lord over people. All these different things that pride and self can produce. And the whole idea is to overcome this and to serve from a position that's not coming, that's needing to feed this place of iniquity. So what is the true discipleship shadow picture design? Well, given to us the most intimate design in Scripture, actually Paul is alluding to was actually this whole marriage covenant. And he says here, for the one, no one ever hated their own flesh, and that is true, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Messiah does the kahal, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. In the Greek, that's chais, or his, actually one. But in the Hebrew, this is yachad, to be united, to be together. And the echad, this future tense of becoming one. And so this is a very interesting allusion to this whole of what is this becoming one with Elohim. And so there's this physical shadow picture that's given to us in the most intimate form of discipleship there is, and that is the marriage covenant. And this is actually linked to a much greater, weightier spiritual matter, which is his kingdom bridal governance and what he is doing. And it's important that we get this. So in this, the two shall become one, this physical shadow picture of marriage, that we are to get this whole spiritual headship and helper position. So whether we are married, single, or widowed, this is a line of sight that we are to get. And so all Paul's doing is referencing the most intimate thing, which was a marriage covenant, to express this and how it's going to go through the whole body. And so they are looking together with the spiritual echad line of sight. And so this is not about controlship from a spiritual headship point of view and lording over, the wife and all this kind of stuff. And it's from the wife's position in this shadow picture design. It's not about usurping this spiritual headship role. It's actually about them coming together. And so both have an incredible line of sight. And so in a healthy covenant perspective, in a marriage covenant or in a body perspective, and as we walk together as a community, we will want the line of sight into spiritual matters of counseling, teaching, initiatives, everything else that includes both the male and female design. I serve better because I have the design of my wife. She has a line of sight as a helper that she will give to me as a part of my responsibilities of spiritual headship. You want these working together so that we will see clearly. And so this is very important. So Paul's relating to this in the most intimate form of discipleship we know, which is the marriage covenant. And this is why Paul often explains and says, as a part of the way the early Kahal and assembly was working, that wives were to go to their own husbands first and foremost. And of course, that's not happening in many cases. And the reason for that is he knows that this is a design that's designed for victory. There's something going on here that is pointing in this shadow picture, our physical marriages, our journeys, even our single widow positions, working as a body, coming together, submitting one to another. There's something that Paul was very aware of, the early Kahal was aware of, indeed the prophets, and certainly what is grounded in the Torah, of this echad. And it's given to us when we come into the matrix, it's given to us in design. When you go through the matrix and you come into the test, you will come in as a male or a female. Your Elohim has designed this intentionally for this reason, that we will experience self, this disease of self, iniquity, and we will have to learn what echad really means. And so the physical experience in the test is all pointing to something because you've come through the womb or the matrix into the test. And it's interesting how only the female design was given as the delivery vessel to come in. So the matrix was given to the female design of this to come into the time domain. So very, very interesting. Can I still become a spiritual cyclops even though I'm married? So I'm married, so that's fine. I can't be a cyclops. I'm going to reiterate again, and there's a very reason why we're going here. Yes. Many of the spiritual cyclops that I see are married women and men. So this isn't about being single or widowed. In fact, I would go as far as to say is most of the spiritual cyclops that I see in the body that are walking with on one line of sight, unfortunately, are actually married. A man is not being the spiritual headship in his home. A woman is usurping the man's spiritual headship if he's attempting to be. They are not spiritually equally yoked. This is a big one. So they're in a marriage covenant situation in the shadow picture, but they're not actually spiritually equally yoked. What's going on here? Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Well, we would sit there and think, okay, well, don't have close fellowship with Romans. That's what it's saying. In fact, we should be being a witness to those who are not of the faith yet. It's not saying to disregard them. But to walk in close fellowship, you're to be with somebody who's equally yoked. There's a difference there. For what partnership has righteousness have with Torahlessness or lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? Now, we can lose this understanding in the English. We just tend to think, oh, that's people without a faith. That's not what it's saying. The context here is these are people with a faith. And so we're going to eliminate this mythos regarding this particular scripture here. In the Greek, in the heterozoguo, to come under unequal or different yoke. That's interesting. To come under unequal or a different yoke is what's saying. The root of this, the heteros, the Greek, or the heteros, the other, another, to number, oppose to some form or person or thing, not of nature, the same nature, form, class, and kind. Well, that's fascinating. And then we've got the zugos here in the Greek, a yoke that is put on cattle, and I was doing it, burden, bondage. That is slavery, troublesome, a balance. Look at this, a pair of scales. And then it goes on to say with unbelievers. So this is being looked at in a sense of scales. It's being looked at as something that is actually in opposition to itself. And now it says, what is it? Apostos. In the Greek, this is unfaithful, faithless, not to be trusted, can be unbelieving, incredulous, without trust in Elohim. In other words, they are unfaithful to what it is they believe. These are people not to be trusted. Now, this is interesting. Do not be or come under a position of someone who is of a different thing concerning the faith, and then coming into this place where they are actually unfaithful as a result. So look at this, is that you can come into a marriage, and I've often seen, especially in the Christian walk, oh, well, they were a believer, and we got married, and we both believed in God, and we both raised our hands on Sundays and, sung together, and that would have meant that I was equally yoked. And many have experienced this. Oh, well, they were in the Hebrew roots or Messianic movements, or they were Jewish or whatever it is. So, and so am I. So we're equally yoked. To know and understand someone's faith is somebody can make any claim they want. Just believing there is a God and carrying out or aligning yourself to some denomination or faith does not mean you're equally yoked with someone. The importance is coming together in the true faith and understanding that with the design. And so this is very, very, very important. And many have experienced great hardships in a marriage situation, in a body contact situation, whatever it is. You're walking with someone you think you are equally yoked with. But until you're in discipleship, you will not know that. Until there is accountability, until there are these things that come across, you won't actually know whether you're equally yoked with someone. So someone shows up in the River Branch community. I come to River Branch. I'm a part of the River Branch community. Okay, now let me feed into your life. If you, the way you are actually discerning something is, well, they show up on a River Branch on Shabbat, or they're in a stable, or they go to women's informal faith. If you're just looking at boxes being ticked and not the actual walk that's going on and getting to know someone and their faith, you could have somebody feed into your life in a very destructive manner. It's that simple. And this is what it's saying. Do not be in this situation. And so the only way you can avoid that is that you walk in a way where you have discipleship, and where and that discipleship then brings about accountability. And without that accountability and that overseeing, we risk having our fellowship experience with the unequally yoked. So, is there a shift in the matrix, in the time domain coming? So this today, and where we're going with this is that there's going to be a shift going on here. There's something that's going to change, that's about to change as we come into this final age. There was a great shift with Adam and Eve. There was a shift in the matrix, and they came into receiving now this fallen state and this iniquity. When Messiah came and fulfilled the spring Moedim, the spring appointed times, literally, there was a great shift that occurred at that time. We're about to experience another one, and it's coming. And so I want to share this, open the matrix. And it's quite interesting, actually. And in fact, the King James uses the word actually matrix when it's giving its here. But I'll read this here. All that opened the womb, the matrix, are mine. And in this example in Exodus, and this is being given, coincidentally enough, just before we're talking about honoring the week of unleavened bread and what this is about. So we're particularly dealing with this part of the framework of his appointed times. And he goes to say, all that open the womb, the matrix, are mine. All your male livestock, the firstborn, cow and sheep. And then it makes it interesting here. The firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. Very interesting. This beast of burden, this servitude, is going to be redeemed with a lamb. And this brings a serious understanding of something that we saw Messiah actually fulfill. Messiah came in with the mother and the donkey he would have grown up with, the very donkey that would have carried him and his mom into Bethlehem before he came in, before he opened the matrix and came into the time domain. He comes in with a colt, an unbroken one. And so he's riding this, and he's got mom in tow. And they're coming in this thing we call the triumphal entry. There is a fulfillment of something happening here in the Torah, in him announcing himself on the lead up to the feast of unleavened bread that was actually going to be literally fulfilled by him. And in this triumphal entry, he literally did something here that very many people miss, that's recorded here in the Torah. A donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. The lamb was riding this donkey. It was actually on it. He was in that lamb, the suffering servant position. He's actually coming in. Don't think what you're seeing is for no reason at all. And as he's coming in and announcing himself, the lamb is actually riding the unbroken one, the one who needs to come into this place of echad. Mom already has, and he had the trusted relationship with her, but he's showing this incredible picture of what's happening here. And he says, and if you won't redeem it, you shall break its neck. In other words, if this is not worthy of redemption, you get rid of this one, because it'll be a wild ass and it will hurt others. So this is a servant perspective. So this is really interesting. The one that is given the servant analogy, this beast of burden, this donkey, is the one that actually you get rid of if they can't be redeemed. And this is why you see the instructions that you see in the Brit from Paul and the disciples. And now they're warning about those who would seek to serve that will not do this in the honorable way, because those ones will actually hurt others. And all the firstborns of your son you shall redeem. But it's very interesting how this is being fulfilled with his triumphal entry, or this great shadow picture that he is doing intentionally with this beast of burden. But it's also interesting that you'll break its neck. And the womb here, the rechem in the Hebrew, the womb, the woman, woman slave, bondservant. Think of the body of Messiah. We are the woman picture in all of this, the woman to women. And this whole picture in the Rechem. The root of this is Rachem, to love deeply, have mercy, be compassionate, have tender affection, have compassion, to love unconditionally of Elohim and man. This is very interesting now as to the why. Those who would open the matrix, the womb, and would come into the time domain, the reason for this is being given in this word. It's that we are going to have an opportunity, a chance to understand mercy, to learn love deeply, to actually understand it unconditionally. And there's no coincidence why Adam and Eve, and when Elohim said it is good, and then he said it is very good, but he did not say it is perfect or complete. This great riddle, what did Adam and Eve in their glorified state still not have? And they did not have this understanding of unconditional love. Was it going to take the test? Was it going to take the opening of the womb, this matrix event that was actually going to give us the opportunity? And did King Solomon realize this when he wrote the whole book of Ecclesiastes? The wisest that ever lived, I believe he did. And so this is an incredible thing that we're seeing. In order for us to come into this test, we must come through the womb or the matrix. Okay, heavenly design line of sight. So you've gone on about this spiritual cyclop business, Donkey. What's going on here? Why is this such a big deal? And you say you can be a spiritual cyclops, whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you're widowed. So why are you bringing this up? Well, this gets very interesting in a later spiritual matter of something that comes into a heavenly design line of sight. Does pride create spiritual cyclops? Now, there's something interesting that we're given here in Scripture. And think about this imagery of one eye. Something happened with the adversary here. And in this lamentation regarding the king of Tyre, a fleshy shadow picture is actually being pointed to that directly references the adversary and his behavior and how this is actually being related to the lamenting of the king of Tyre and his behavior. There's something going on here that is likened to the adversary himself. And this is recorded here in Ezekiel 28, 14, 15. It says, "You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you on the holy mountain of Elohim. In the midst of the stones of fire you walked." Now this is interesting. Remember stones here. There's a very intimate place with Elohim that involves the stones that are in the midst of this set apart holy fire. And he says, you walked. The word here in Hebrew is halak. In other words, this anointed guardian cherub was walking Achad, in an intimate place with Elohim. A heavenly line of sight was in place with him to go and walk, to proceed, a manner of life, to traverse, this cause to walk, to bring about. On the negative side, to die, think of die to self here, to lead, but it also can end up being to go away, to lead away, to depart in the negative. So this halakhic thing that was going on, something happened. And this behavior is being likened directly to the adversary here in Ezekiel. And the great prophet Ezekiel is recording, you were blameless in your ways from the day you were created till unrighteousness or iniquity was found in you. Okay, interesting. Does unrighteousness link to pride? And is this relating directly to the adversary and what went down in a very intimate place with Elohim and this anointed guardian cherub? 28, 16, 17. In the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence. In the midst, you sinned. So I cast you as a profane thing. I broke your neck from the mountain of Elohim. And I destroyed you, O guardian cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You were corrupted. Oh, you looked good. All looked good on the outside. Your wisdom Oh, you thought you knew better. You thought you had it all. For the sake of your splendor, for the sake of your self-worth, and how it's all going to be, I cast you to the ground. I expose you before kings to feast their eyes on you. We got this example with the king of Babylon. Again, the fleshy shadow picture is pointing to the references of the actual adversary. Oh, how are you fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the dawn. Son of the dawn, how you're cut down to the ground. You laid the nations low. You burned down the village. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. Above the stars of Elohim, I will set my throne on high. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. Again, we see this likening, this picture of a certain type of behavior, a way, a pride, a thing that has taken hold, and it's being likened directly to the adversary. There's a reason for this. The adversary is the spiritual cyclops. He literally came out of an Akkad line of sight. And the occult symbolism around this is literally telling you this. It has become the all-seeing eye of this God of this world. It is the major occult symbol that it is related to. And it's literally telling you, the one who will be like the Most High, in his pride, he knew better. He not only lost the Akkad line of sight, he now walks alone. And he walks as the ultimate spiritual cyclop and is used as the adversary as a result. What I'm saying here is this. If you choose not to have the Akkad line of sight in your life, in your spiritual walk, whether you're married, single, widowed, if you choose to not have this fed into your life, you become or can be used as the dishonorable vessel as the adversarial position to Messiah himself. You become the vessel for the spiritual cyclops, whether you know it or not. The Akkad line of sight is not only important, it's the exact opposite of the adversary who once had it and walked away from it. And so that occult symbolism that you see being used for Hasatan is indeed real. He's walking with one line of sight, and he only sees it now from his position. And so he can be used in the adversary role. Was there a heavenly line of sight that Elohim is looking to restore? Is there something that Hasatan chose to walk away from that Elohim, in his great plan of redemption, is going to restore something into the picture? What on earth is about to happen? What is this shift in the matrix? Behold, I'm doing a new thing. It now springs forth. So in Isaiah 43:19, do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and the rivers in the desert. What is this new thing that he's going to bring about? What is this restoration? What's going to be restored? What's going to make a way in the wilderness and the rivers in the desert? This chadash, this new thing. Yada, to perceive it, to observe, to discern, to understand, even references instruction. We see here in 2 Peter 1:19-21 here. He says, and we have the prophetic word more fully confirmed. The actual prophetic word given to us. There is no New Testament at this time. It's referring to the Torah and to the prophets, with this more fully confirmed than your ideas, your good thoughts, your initiatives, I know better, whatever it is, to which you do well to take heed. Take heed of what is contained in the Torah and the warning of the prophets, as to a lamp shining in a dark place. Ezekiel is warning us in these different examples here. Until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. this heart circumcision, knowing first that no prophecy of Scripture comes from someone's own interpretation. This is being laid down, the more sure word, this framework of his great plan of redemption, these appointed times. What are they? We are to guard the Sabbath, the weekly appointed time, and then there is 7 annual for which the whole plan of redemption is laid out. For no prophecy was ever produced by the will of man, but men spoke from Elohim as they were carried along by his Ruach, by his Holy Spirit. As a result of this, we are to proclaim this. And this is why the River Branch community and its discipleship and what we engage in on the calendar is without tradition, both Christian and Jewish. It is focused on these appointed times and to proclaim them as set-apart convocations because they are his. And this is what we are to do. It is the more sure word, to cry out, to do this. So this is what we're doing as a community in a discipleship environment and manner, both on the weekly Shabbat and the annual appointed times. And this is why we do this. It's all a part of it. There's no question as to why these things are being referenced, but in this final age, there's something to come. It's called the last great day, the 1,000-year reign of Messiah, this last great day, which when we honor the annual appointed times according to Torah, there is this thing at the end of the wedding covenant, the wedding feast, these 7 days. We are then to stay that extra day. And we are to do this in as an appointed time in and of itself. And a lot of people miss this in Leviticus. The last great day is a Moedim. It is an appointed time, and it's representing the last great day, this 1,000-year reign of Messiah. I got here a bridal governance illusion. In Ecclesiastes 8:13, and I just read this as we were doing the studies, and I can't help it, this is me just nerding out. But when I was rereading and saw this in Ecclesiastes in 8:13, I read it in a way that's quite interesting, because now I'm looking at this going, wow, what's actually happening here? This plan of redemption, these appointed times, this more sure word of prophecy, his framework. But it will not be well for the evil man, and he will not lengthen his days like a shadow because he does not fear or revere Elohim. Now, what is interesting is when you look at days, not just from the days of our time in the time domain, but when you look at it in a prophetic framework of 1,000 years is a day, and a day of 1,000 years, these 7 days, these 7,000 years. This is interesting because the lengthening of days to participate in the final coming age, this shift in the matrix, is actually related to something. And is it possible that, oh yes, this does relate to our days in the time domain? Is it possible there's a greater allusion to the plan of redemption for those who will enter into a true reverence of Elohim, for those that will find this place to be included in this great shift that is coming on this entry into the time domain? And so is this lengthening of days, could it actually include a bridal governance illusion? It's interesting. Raising the eternal family. Sometimes maybe some of you have heard this. There is a job to do. There is something coming, this grand finale in his great plan of redemption. And it's going to require raising something that is going to go into eternity. And we've had this 6,000 years of betrothal, but there's something coming. There's this restoration of an Akkad line of sight at a heavenly level. And if we as a River Branch community understand through discipleship and what our Master and our Messiah, our King, our Bridegroom was imploring us of, what the disciple Paul, what the disciples knew, was that something is coming. And it's going to be a restoration of something. Something happened in the heavenlies that caused a separation of something that gave us the adversarial position that would walk only with a one line of sight. And this great shadow picture, this time in the time domain, is pointing to something, because this great shift in the time domain, the shift in the matrix, is for a reason. There's a delivery of something coming out of the matrix, out of the womb. This grand finale. Eternity is going to be set in play, and he's done something to prepare for it. I have to mention this in Bereshit, in Genesis here, 28:12. It says, and he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder. So this is Jacob. He's Yaakov. He's just left Beersheba. He's come to this place, and he's lying down, putting his head on a rock, and he gets this dream from Elohim. And behold, there was a ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of Elohim were ascending and descending on it. In other words, he's watching something now where they don't need the womb, the matrix. There's something going on here where he's watching the messengers descend and ascend, and they're not going through the matrix. What's going on? Let's hold that thought. Then Yaakov awoke from his sleep and said, surely Yah is in this place, and I did not know it. What did he not know? What's going on here? Why is it that all will come through the womb of the matrix, yet he's watching something where they're not requiring this? They appear to be coming and going into the time domain without it. In John 14, 1-4, Yeshua says a very interesting statement. Let your hearts not be troubled. Believe in Elohim. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? He's going to prepare a place for us. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and I will take to you myself, that where I am, you will be also. And you know the way to where I'm going. Whoa. The only way out of this time domain is death. Now, this is interesting. He's going to prepare a place for us. Yet we know at the end of this great final age, this final shift in the time domain, the matrix, that all things are made new. All things are renewed in heaven and earth. This only has a place for the 1,000-year reign. It only has a place following the fulfillment of the fall appointed times. So this is interesting. Jacob's seen something that can come and go without the matrix now, without the womb, and Yeshua's giving a hint of something here. And he's about to ascend, and he's telling them of something. I'm going to give you something. This is where I kind of nerd out a bit. If we're resurrected on Yom Teruah and we're given a glorified state, which the messengers are in a glorified state, and Yaakov is witnessing them coming and going, those who have done their time in the time domain, who have come through the matrix, who've come through the womb, the entry into it, once they're done with this, and they're in a glorified state, do you mean that Messiah himself and what Yaakov was witnessing is indicating, and as the messengers are able to visit those who served him from, right, counted all throughout Scripture, the prophets, the disciples, they had the capacity to do this. And what I'm suggesting to you is after the first resurrection, after this great event, there's something that is capable in the glorified state to interact with the time domain. But there is something coming that has to enter into this test. But there's something that's able to interact with it that no longer takes the womb or the matrix to come in and out of this place. It's a glorified position. And a glorified position no longer needs the womb. It's done. She's been through it. She's gone through it. And indeed, our Elohim himself chose to go through it. And there's a cry in the Psalms. I don't have time to get into all of this today, but there's an actual cry that he himself would come and deal with this. And indeed, he himself did. You know him as Yeshua HaMashiach, our King and Bridegroom. He did his time. Earthly kings and queens at her feet. What happens if you do your time? What happens if we finish in a place of honor? What happens if we come into our glorified state raised on Yom Teruah, raised for a purpose and a chad line of sight being restored for the last and great final age? Earthly kings and queens at her feet. This is interesting. In Isaiah 49:23, yes, this does speak of Zion. Yes, it does speak in relationship to Messiah, but a lot of people miss, and all the Hebrew being used here is feminine singular. There's an allusion to something here. Kings shall be your foster fathers, and your queens your nursing mothers. With their faces to the ground, they shall bow down to you and lick the dust of your feet. All in feminine singular here. Very interesting. Then you will know that I am Yah. Those who wait for me shall not be put to shame. Shall not be put to shame. The bush. Disappointed. Be ashamed. They're in a place. Something's going on here where Messiah, Zion, and something that's alluding to this female singular position is going to be honored during this time. Those who would come into the matrix. Come through the matrix. Isaiah 60:14-15. The sons of those who are afflicted, you shall come bending low to you. All who have despised you shall bow down at your feet. And they shall call you the city of Yah, Zion, the Holy One of Israel. Whereas you have been forsaken and hated, no one passing. Look at this. No one passing through. I will make you majestic forever. The majestic here in the English. The Gaon. Exaltation. Majesty. Pride in the good sense. His pride. Excellence of Elohim. The root of this. The Ga. To rise up. Think Yom Teruah. To grow up. Think maturing in Messiah. To be exalted in triumph. To grow up. To be lifted up. Think the bridegroom lifting the bride. Be raised up. To be exalted. Forever. Olam. Forever. Everlasting. Evermore. Perpetual. Old. Ancient in nature. What happened before all of this time domain was put into play? And we required the matrix or the womb to come into it. Continuous existence, indefinite, unending future, eternity. The root of this is Olam. Look at this. To conceal, hide, be hidden, be concealed, to be secret. This was intentionally, it is the glory of Elohim to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search it out. There is something being given here that has been concealed for a reason. And we now live in a time which indeed those who came before us would have longed for, to be able to understand this. As we get to the end of this age and are approaching the final and last age, he's being made, things are being made known. God, hear the glorified honor. And this is what I believe Yaakov was seeing, what Yeshua was relating to, what he was alluding to. For this line of momentary, for this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight. Think of the scales. An eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. And we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen, concealed, hidden. For the things that are seen are transient, temporary, as King Solomon would put it in Ecclesiastes, Haval. But the things that are unseen are eternal. Do you know the word being used here in the Greek? A very interesting word, and we don't have time to get into all how this transpires, but doxa is being used. This relates now to the ability of judgment resulting in praise, honor, and glory, splendor, brightness. You will shine like the stars of heaven? Does it not say from the prophets? When you're raised, these are the ones that will shine like the heavens, the magnificence, excellence, preeminence, dignity, majesty, a thing belonging to Elohim. This is the thing the adversary abandoned. This covering cherub mentioned, left this place. The kingly majesty which belongs to the supreme ruler, the absolute perfect inward, apparent exterior brightness, most glorious condition, most exalted state, glorious condition, appointed and promised. What a word to be using here for glory. And it's not used lightly when we look at the Brit Hadashah. The weight of doxa, the weight of this glorious thing, which is beyond all comparison. Glorified honor, again being used here in Revelation. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring glory and honor to it. This place of the presence of the glorified Jerusalem and Messiah and who he's with. And the gates shall not be shut nor day or night. Will not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring, look at this, the glory and honor of the nations into it. Doxa, again, is being used in this glorified, honored position. Something, the honor that we are experiencing if we walk in this place is going to take a glorified seat, a glorified position. In 1 Timothy 10:11, Michael mentioned this in the first part of the Timothy series in its physical shadow picture sense. Now think of it in its spiritual weightier matter sense. I'm going to read it again. The sexually immoral, the spiritually adulterous, those who practice homosexuality or this relationship of the bride with the whore of Mystery Babylon, who's represented as a woman. Enslavers, liars, perjurers, whatever is contrary to sound doctrine. Think of this now in spiritual terms, happening in spiritual ways of how we walk as a people and as a body. Our behavior matters. Our design matters. All of this matters. And if we don't take it seriously, it will lead us to a spiritual cyclops position, an adversary position. In accordance with the gospel of the glory, doxa, and of the blessed Elohim, which I have been entrusted. Literally, Paul is saying, I've been entrusted with doxa. I am operating at this level right now, and he's giving discipleship. He's speaking to the early kahal. He's putting in how this needs to be done. Take his word serious. He's saying this are the actions, the instructions, the servitude, the framework that will come from something that is going to experience a glorified honor. It's bridal. He's basically telling you, he knows he's finished at a place. I'm being entrusted with a bridal governance position. In the parable of the wedding feast, here recorded in Luke 4:8-9, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, now remember the instructions given in the Greek, treat them, their behavior, if they're causing dissension and all this kind of thing, treat them as if they're not invited. But if you're invited someone to the wedding feast, do not sit down in the place of honor. Interesting, the word being used here, the protoecclesia. The first reclining place, the chief place at the table, the relevant rank. Do not grab it yourself, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. The him here, think of Messiah. Don't you go and grab the honor. Don't go and take it and become this other place. And he who is invited, you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person. And then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. In other words, experience the humility of actually, when you start to understand this place and that there's a doxa place coming, in other words, don't go and try and grab it yourself. The root of this, the protos, the protos, a place in any succession of things in person, first in ranks, influence, honor, chief, principal, first, at the first before. This is this place where the Sanhedrin, at the time of the temple, the time of Yeshua and the disciples, they're saying these are the ones that want the chief seats and all this sorts of things. They want to be seen in this place. And then the ecclesia here, this tent, they want to be seen in this place. They want to grab it. They want to take it. They don't want the bridegroom to assign it. They want to take it themselves. He goes on. But when you're invited, go and sit in the lower place. It's okay. Be humble yourself so that when your host comes, think Messiah, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Not what are you doing here? Oh, we're going to lift you up higher. Then you will be honored, doxa, in the presence of all who sit at the table with you, the wedding feast. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. There is a prideful behavior of that which is spiritual cyclopsing that will seek to elevate self. And there is a humble behavior of that which walks in the echad line of sight that will seek to humble itself. And there's a direct relationship to this honor and shame and this doxa, this glorified honor that's going to occur in this shift of the matrix that's actually going to affect the last great age of the time domain. So is this about overcoming this matrix test? So we've come through. We've opened the matrix, the womb. We've come through, and we're looking to overcome something. In Isaiah 62, 1, 2, for Zion's sake, I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not be quiet until her righteousness, her kavod, her glory, it's the Hebrew equivalent of doxa, goes forth as a brightness, and of her salvation as a burning torch. The nations shall see your kavod, and all the kings your kavod. Look at this. And you shall be called, look at this, a new name that the mouth of Yah will give. Does anybody see the striking allusions of something on the revelation of Messiah? In Revelation 2:17, this is the church of Pergamum, that which overcomes is an interesting thing that's stated here that's lining up with the prophet Isaiah. Let whom has he hear, let him who hear what the Spirit says to the kahal, to the churches. To the one who conquers or overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone. Remember the stones in the midst of the set-apart place with Elohim? With a new name written on that stone. These are the very stones that the covering cherub walked amongst. A sanctified stone. The one that our adversary, our ultimate spiritual cyclops, abandoned. Something's being given, being restored here in a heavenly position. A new name written on it that no one except the one who receives it knows. This is the revelation of Messiah. And then it goes on to say, 3:21, this is speaking to Laodicea, but again, to the one who overcomes. One of my most favorite scriptures, anybody who knows me knows this, and I love this scripture because there's no way around it. To the one who overcomes, I will grant him to sit with me on my throne. It says it plainly in the revelation of Yeshua HaMashiach. And I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. This glorified, honored position, this echad, ultimate line of sight. In the 1,000-year reign, he is restoring something, an event that is alluded to, an event that actually created and birthed the adversary himself, is getting a restoration of something. And he's going to employ this in this last and great final age, this raising of the eternal family, if you will. Yeshua Messiah is going to take the throne, and there is going to be something that is administering with him on that throne, this bridal governance. And he is restoring an echad line of sight. He is choosing to do this as one with his bride. He gives it the analogy of the bride, this people that will serve, his kingdom come, his will be done. There's something went down before the time domain, before the need even for a matrix or a womb. Something occurred before what we read in Bereshit at the beginning with the waters and the darkness. Something happened outside this time domain that created the whole need for it. And he's going to restore it. And the example of this is going to be seen in the lasting great final picture before eternity. He's bringing it back into place. And the stones are going to be restored with the name of the bridal governance upon it to those who overcome. He's restoring the spiritual echad line of sight for this last and final age. Blessed and holy are the ones who share in the first resurrection, or Yom Teruah. Over such the second death has no power, but they will be the ones of Elohim and of Messiah, and they will reign with him for 1,000 years. The last great day is the context of this. 3 resurrections in total, the first of the first fruits with Messiah and those that are resurrected with him. The resurrection of Yom Teruah, and at the end of the 1,000 years, there is a final resurrection and the great white throne judgment. The adversary is locked away during this final age. When he restores this echad line of sight, he's actually removing the spiritual cyclops. We are going to raise the eternal family. And he will allow one more round of the spiritual cyclops, the final sifting, the final testing at the end of it, according to Scripture, to lead people away. But he is actually bringing in the full line of sight for this last and great final age. Never walk alone. The Messiah, the King, the Bridegroom, our Elohim, is not planning to walk alone in the coming final age or eternity. If he is not planning to do it, and he's restoring this echad line of sight and this whole shadow picture of what we are to learn and to understand through discipleship, through walking as a body, that shadow picture which we're all living now, River Branch, a shadow picture. What we do, why we are trying to honor certain principles, a shadow picture. Our marriage covenants, a shadow picture. A single person looking to ensure they're walking with others that they can have that echad line of sight, or a widow, or whatever it is, flows down all through discipleship. That as a River Branch village, we may see echad. If we can get there, we may just be able to be a part of the weightier matter and what is coming. This is all but a shadow picture. All of it. But if our Messiah is choosing not to walk alone, how silly would it be for us to choose the adversary position? Who chose to walk alone and was used as the adversary as a result. Do we want to walk in a community where we're choosing to walk alone and therefore become the adversary, become the shadow picture of this great heavenly, weightier spiritual matter? Or do we want to be the shadow picture of the weightier spiritual matter of a glorified, honored position? This is a choice that we all face now. The weight of our pride, where this all started, and what is sandwiched between shame, when we act shamefully, when we act as a spiritual cyclop, when we act as the adversary within a believing body context, it is pride and self that is sandwiched between that position. And what is between honor and a glorified honor will be humility, that which does not try to seat itself at the head of the table at a wedding feast, which is the example given, is humility and others. This is weighed in the sight of our Elohim as we started off this series. The glorified, honored position is coming as the weight of his bride. The scales are going to tip. She will humble herself. She will walk with others. She will do it this way. And those scales are going to literally tip. And it is the weight of his bride that is tipping the scales. And he plans on lifting her up and showing all. This echad line of sight, and that which tipped the scales did the exact opposite of the adversary. Ruling with the weight, the honor of his bride, a big shift in the matrix is coming. The spiritual cyclops, the adversary, the ultimate spiritual cyclops and adversary is being removed, and the restored Akkad line of sight of the bride or governance is being restored. And the last and great final age, and what we call the feast, the fall appointed times, the shadow picture is pointing to a great event. Indeed, there is a shift or a change coming to the matrix for those who would open it and will come into the final age. The last one is coming soon. And those who know, these are the five, generally the five main creatures that Elohim himself allows himself to be associated with. The bull and the ox, the Torah, his righteousness established, the eagle, the prophets, the cry from the wilderness, the lamb, the sacrifice, the suffering servant, and the fulfillment of his prophetic word. The dove, the Holy Spirit, the Ruach. The last one's coming. The lion, the king, the avenger of blood. He's on his way. And he's going to fulfill this final age and restore this discipleship, the ultimate discipleship environment. Come, Yeshua, Messiah. May we not be found wanting. May we, in this shadow picture of discipleship, just get what he's wanting to see from us as we seek to serve, as we seek to walk together, to not walk alone, that we could be a part of this restoration of this Akkad line of sight, that actually we could be our part in our little place in River Branch. And as we walk together, that we could be a part of this weight that tips the scales, that we're not found wanting, that we can be found worthy to be a part of serving in a glorified, honored place, that we had done our time in the matrix and we now can come and go and to be a part of what he is going to restore upon the earth and to raise the eternal family as he locks away the adversary. May we take discipleship and the line of sight, the design, the reason for correction, reproof, accountability, overseeing all of these things. May we help each other finish this race. May the first be last and the last be first. May we cross this together. May we figure this out. And maybe, just maybe, if we take discipleship seriously, if we take the designs within discipleship seriously, and if we understand Echad, we can help each other finish this place in a glorified, honored position. And we will watch these scales tipped, and maybe we can be a part of this great and final age to come, this bridal governance, which he's going to hold up as a glorious witness to all that will be administered his ways. If Messiah is choosing not to walk alone, then why would our shadow picture of choosing to walk alone line up with the very thing that he's choosing not to do? He's going to choose to not walk alone. The adversary chose to walk alone. I encourage everyone, let's help each other do this. And if you've watched this and you've been a part of understanding why we take discipleship so seriously, this is the why. This is the greater meaning. To help each other get there and to walk with those who do. But we're not going to get there with our pride, our need for self-affirmation, our need for self-worth, to elevate ourselves, to sit ourselves in the chief seats, to put ourselves in the place of the wedding feast. We must allow the bridegroom to sit us there. And we need each other to help each other do that. Amen? So let's finish there at the discipleship series, and we'll come back for the Q&A shortly.